On this episode of Mighty Car Mods, we're going to install our new wheels.
Plus, we're going to show you how to install some mad fender flares on your beastly ride. Direct from eBay to you. Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods. Now, who would have thought that a bit of moulded plastic could make you feel so good? But flares do exactly that. But why would we need them? Well, to fit these.
So last episode, we went and completely refurbished these wheels. I bought them off the internet. They were pretty bad. We went down to Barrel Brothers and those guys helped us recondition these into the really nice looking things you see today. Brand new lips, painted centers, and a perfect fit for this Mira.
Yep, so perfect in fact, we'll show you how perfect it is. Check this out. So Marty, these are the wheels that were running on the car when we first bought this car in Japan, and they fit pretty well. There's not a whole lot of poke, the offset's kind of right.
They're perfect K-car wheels, and they are like auto backs or yellow hat or up garage specials because they'll fit pretty much any 4-stud car. So you go in with your little all drive Mira and say, I want some wheels to put my winter tyres on, which is probably what they were for, and they go, sure, we have something for you. Because it is a 4x110 stud pattern, so it's 110 mil between each thing. 4x100 is more common, 4x114.3 is more common on old Datsuns and other cool stuff like that. Mira is only the same as I think some old RX-3s or RX-7s, so it's pretty uncommon. We're lucky to find these on the internet, but they were total rubbish. And yeah, in terms of fitment...
Let's have a quick look around the other side. Like look at that number plate, man. Look at it.
They look really cool. But, and there's a fairly giant but.
Are you ready? Apparently that is called Mexican...
It's called
Mexican stance
flush.
Or Mexi flush or something. It's some silly thing.
Something that I don't understand. But anyway, so what's going on there? You probably remember in the last episode we spoke about offset. The offset is too low, high, too negative basically. We've pretty much got the wheel sitting too far out from the hub. Now, there's so few wheels available, and especially in this style, that you're pretty much rolling a dice to see if it would fit. Now, with the other wheels, the offset is, you know, it sits nice and close into the car, which is good for fitment. This, I think, is going to look really good, but it's going to need something over the top, flares, body kit, whatever. Now, you can't buy body kits for these cars, not easily, and if you could, it was probably 20 years since they made them new. You could make a custom fiberglass thing like we did in our show car, but realistically, I think for this car, to make these wheels look good and fit and not rub on anything, is we're going to put on some universal flares. You can't have your wheels sort of poking out past your guards, so you basically make the car fit the wheels, which is not that uncommon, and I think it's going to look really cool.
So these
go over the top, not quite like that. We've got a little bit of work to do to make these fit, and there's also a few little tricks to do with what flares you actually buy. Again, if you have a really common car, like I know on Civics and some Skylines and some really common stuff like that, you can actually buy fender flares that are designed specifically for those cars. You can get an idea of why that's going to fit because you've got, you know, a much better gap there. You've got to make some decisions about how high or low you go and what you cut and what you don't cut, and also what kind of flares to use. So come with us while we explore this flary journey. To make these wheels fit the car, I think it's going to look really cool, and I think particularly once this car is all painted up and everything's cleaned up and the dents are gone and this is the one colour, I think it's going to look really cool.
So this is a set of universal fender flares. In fact, it is 2 sets, and I'll explain to you why. So when you buy these, they come in a set of 4. They're 45 bucks, so it's $11 something each. And there's 2 different sizes. There's 85 centimeters from arch to arch and 75 centimeters, which is the smaller one, but you can't buy 4 of the smaller ones. So we had to buy 2 sets that come with 2 large ones and 2 small ones so that we can get 4 small ones for the little nugget. So it's $90 all up, but the bigger ones we'll probably put on something else or throw them in the bin, possibly where they belong. But these, is this a small one or a big one, Martin? That looks pretty big.
Put them, that looks kind of big. Just pull them all out, man. You'll be able to see when you lay them out, I reckon.
And so it is, well, it's either a simple or a complex install, depending on how far you want to go with it. But before we go any further, that's a smaller one, Marty is going to show you what tools you're going to need.
These are the tools you're going to need to install your mad flares. Firstly, we've got a pen and some tape. We're going to have to mark on the car where the flares are going to go. Once we've marked it, we're going to drill some holes. So we've got some various size drill bits there. Then we're going to clean up the holes. Then we're going to rust proof them using some paint. Then we're going to install some riv nuts or nut certs. And to do that, you need one of these awesome handle gun things that put riv nuts into your car. It makes it really, really easy to install them like that. Then we may have to cut away bits of our car. If so, we've got a grinder. If we have to cut the metal, we're also going to have to use our trusty MIG welder to weld it back together. We're not sure yet if we're going to need to, but depending on your car, you might.
The first thing you need to do is jack up your car. We're using jack stands on the chassis so we can adjust where the wheel sits in the guards by jacking up the suspension independently. We can then decide exactly where the flare needs to be attached for maximum James Bond effect. That height, even if you didn't have flares, that already looks good. Like if this car was sitting like that normally.
Yep.
And then this here really is now just adjusting your perception of lowness.
Exactly.
Because that's like normal, and then the further you come down, the lower the car is going to appear in relation to the wheel.
That's right. A lot of guards also have this flattened section, and in a way that's not a bad spot to attach to. It also means you don't have to cut. Thing is, every car's different. Like if you're going to go full slam spec, then you have to chop a lot of this out, otherwise you're going to scrub. This doesn't scrub currently, but also this has standard shocks and springs. The reason I've jacked it up is so we can see where the suspension arms are sitting, and currently they're fairly flat, which means this thing is always designed to have ride height, and it makes sense because it's a four-wheel drive car that's designed for the snow. So why would they need it to move so far up into the guard? But the other thing is with coilovers, we can adjust that height. So realistically, I think the way to do it for the front is to sort of split the difference and have them, you know, still have it. Like that's a really nice gap, I think. You know, and it's never going to go much lower than that because it is going to contact this if it does. So there's also no reason why, particularly in our situation, we can't move it later, because you can attach them, and if that doesn't work, there's no reason you can't move them up because you're going to lose that bit of metal anyway, right? But it's also about getting the curve, and this is where the heat gun comes in handy because we need to change our curve a little bit, and the more you change it, you notice the more flare you get. So we'll just have to work that out. We've also got our side
That actually looks pretty good though. Like when it's with it bent like that.
If we follow, we follow the contour and pretty much attach it from the bottom first, I reckon that looks pretty good. We've got some gap in here, but we also will get some gasket that'll go in there. And this may get updated when it's painted too, because at that point you pull the whole thing apart and work it out. But I think for the sake of making it look cool today, I reckon that's probably about right, man.
You almost don't really even need to cut the front if that's where it's going to sit. We're probably going to have to cut the back, but you probably don't have to cut that.
Not at this stage anyway. And we just have to try it, because I'd rather start it like this and then work out if it's going to scrub and then go again. And again, once we have coilovers, this may change. So at that point, when you put coilovers in it and realise it's too low, you just go and move it, cut, away you go.
Cool.
But you can see, like a normal car, you could probably just fit it right like that, but they are designed to be bent. So we could pretty much go ahead and, I reckon, make that one fit.
I agree.
Shall we?
Let's do it.
All right.
First up, we have to drill some holes in our flares, and we're using a punch to make sure that the drill bit is centred. Starting with a gentle tap on the centre punch, then we're using a small drill bit for a pilot hole, then a 6.5mm hole for our M6 hex head bolts.
It fits pretty good, man. But in our mad pile of JDM Mira bits, which is all this stuff, we still got our side skirts, which we never put on because I was waiting till the day that we had some wheels to make it worthwhile. So I don't think these things will fit bolt on because...
Will they fit tape on though, Martin?
Because most of where these things attach is the white car.
Right.
We'll attach that somehow.
Attach that with some tape.
So I'll just make sure it's in the right spot. There are holes because it's from this original guard.
Of course.
Which means we can put a clip in it as well.
There's clips there.
Those. We're going to try to blend the black plastic flare into the black plastic body kit that was on the original JDM Mira that arrived on 2 pallets. This should help keep the original lines of the car without too much pokey-outy bad James Bond effect. With our location set, it's time to start making holes in this little nugget. Now that the scariest part of the install is done, which is drilling holes in your irreplaceable JDM guards, the next thing we need to do is actually mount the flares. Now, There's a few ways we can do this. We could use nuts and bolts because you can get to the back of these. You could use roofing screws, self-tapping screws, pretty much whatever you want. We're going to use nutserts or riv nuts as they're known. These are kits you can buy. This is the tool you use to install them, and they're pretty much used to give you a threaded hole on the back of a flat panel. And it does that by you put it in the tool and it squashes it down, and then you can actually put bolts through it. In our case, we're going to use hex-headed bolts, which means the flares are removable and should look pretty cool. So let's do it.
You can get both stainless steel and aluminium riv nuts. The steel ones can be really hard to squash down, but are more durable. With the correct size hole drilled, in this case 9mm, it's just a matter of winding the riv nut onto the tool, pressing it against the panel, giving it a mad squeeze, and it's installed and ready to take an M6 by 1.0 bolt.
We are going to be painting this car soon, so we'll have a chance to properly rust-proof everything, but if you are drilling holes in metal, it's a good idea to apply something, rust inhibitor, paint, even etch primer, just so that water doesn't get trapped in between the riv nut and the panel.
One of the more commonly used methods to attach flares is with a rivet gun. It helps the flares sit flush to the guards, but it's trickier to remove. Being that this will all have to come off for paint, we want to make it easy to get off without damaging the car. With the riv nuts installed, we can start to bolt the flares on, loosely fitting the bolts to help the flare maintain the correct curve.
Pretty happy with how that's looking. We do need to put a little rubber gasket in behind these flares. There's gaskets you can buy specifically that hook over here, have adhesive and sort of seal the gap so that when your water hits it, it does run off the top. It also helps when you've got little gaps like around this point and around the bumper bar, although they're sticking pretty well because we've used the right size flares and they're following the shape of the guard. The next decision to make is with this side skirt, these little plastic extensions actually give me the choice of whether I go on the outside of the side skirt or the inside. Now the inside might look a little bit more factory, or I might need to trim down that to fit over the top, but either way it's stopping in the middle is not really going to work, so potentially I either cut this out or it goes on the inside, so have to work it out.
I only get one chance to cut this flare properly or I have to start from scratch. So to make sure everything is positioned correctly, I'm going to install the entire side skirt using the same riv nut method as the flare. This long rear section will then meet up to the detachable section just behind the front wheel. The JDM skirts bolt straight into the body, and I'll use the same stainless steel hardware to attach it. This car won't be seeing snow anytime soon, so it should stand the test of time.
These are looking so good. How you going over there, mate?
So the next step is pull the rear springs out because JDM button.
What?
And that's just how we'll run it. Well, that's how we did our Bozo car. And
go down.
we basically just want to, oh yeah, pull that shock out of the way.
Just move it.
What we basically want to do is get the car to its maximum lowness. Cheryl.
She calls you all the time, man.
This is...
Look at it. Look at the lowness.
Or the highness.
So when the car stops moving, what just happened? Did the jack just let go?
No. Something weird just happened.
Oh, the jack. Maybe that's the jack.
That was weird. All right, so once...
Yeah, there she goes. So that's got to be on a bump stop. And in this case, I don't think we even have rubber ones. Or if we do, they're not... Yeah, we do. Well, no, we don't actually. There's no bump stops in there.
Really?
Yeah, it needs bump stops. This is about the height I imagine it will ride at when it's got coilovers in it. I'm just sort of looking at the length of the shocks and the length of the springs, because these springs are too long. They're standard replacement.
Yeah.
They're actually too long. And coilovers, when we put them in, will have adjustable springs or spring seats that will cut about that much length off the spring. And then we'll have a bump stop that's about 25mm big. And I'm actually quite close to the bump stops already, which means if I jack it up, the bump stops are about there. Which means
which means it would never go higher than that. The wheel would never go higher than that.
The car can't physically go any lower, and the reason that is because we've got a small diameter wheel and a small diameter tyre. You know, the other side actually comes a lot closer, but that's because the tyres are taller. So really, we don't actually need to chop it. So I'm wondering if we should.
If we don't have to chop it, we shouldn't chop it. But I still think we should do like a full flare instructional, and that could be the good excuse to go buy a Yaris.
Go buy a Yaris. Well, the thing is, if you chop up a Yaris, you can go and get another Yaris the next day from the wreckers for like $2.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. But I'm just thinking, like, Yeah, I don't think I'll ever reverse it, but I know I'll be totally kicking myself. And that's the thing when it's a car you want to keep for a long time and actually care about, isn't it?
Well, Martin, let's just continue down the road as if we're not cutting it.
Yep.
And then if we need to cut it, we will.
All right.
And if we don't have to cut it, we'll buy a Yaris. Deal?
Yeah, done. Everybody wins.
Our front flare is on, our side skirt is in place, so now it's time to install the rear flare. It's way too long for the back, so we're going to cut the end off with an angle grinder and then tuck it into where the rear guard and side skirt meet. With the curve of the flare set, it's time to drill more holes. Bang for your buck, this is about as good as things are going to look for like 10 bucks a go, I reckon, on a car, you know what I mean? Like, we've talked about garden edging and stuff like that, but it's like 10 bucks per flare and they actually make your car look pretty boss. Like, remember when we were looking at the 240Z online?
Yeah.
And we saw it had the flares and we were just like, yeah! It's like, that guy probably just put them on just before he sold it, spent his 40 bucks and then we're all fapping crazy in Australia.
They are controversial and there will be people that say that, you know, it's too generic or whatever, but the truth is you can't buy a body kit for this easily. And even if you can, some of the ones that I've seen for these kind of cars, like they're so out there. They're full bozo style, man. Like they're off their heads. And I just want a subtle little flare to put decent sized wheels on with a cool sort of offset. And it's gonna look good, man. Especially when the front's got a little bit of negative camber on it and the back's a nice height. It's all adjusted properly. And the idea is you can drive it, not hit anything and just have a good time. Oh man, there's also gonna be people out there that want their nibbled by while the pecks their nipples. Do you know what I mean? And that's just their thing. I can't help them with that.
The point is like everyone's...
The pigeon, maybe.
Everyone's...
I could be the pigeon.
Everyone's floating their goat with different ice cream. This is the Australian bit, remember?
It is the Australian bit. This is replaceable.
So when people like go, JDM, don't drill holes, it's the Australian one.
Notice I was extra careful on the JDM bits.
Yes.
Even though they're the same as the Aussie ones mostly.
They actually came from the same place.
They actually did.
It's like, it's just the internet tax that decides how much things should cost.
It's whoever went through the hassle of having to get that car from one side of the world to the other and deal with the taxes and all the bullshit. Nutserts are so good. If you haven't got on this train yet, get yourself a ticket because they are freaking awesome. I know this was kind of meant to be like a full like DIY video, but half the stuff that we're planning on showing you this morning we now don't need to do. But a Yaris is imminent. You all know it's going to happen. Either a Yaris or an MR2. They're both equally as special as each other, but you can all argue about that for a while. Martin, this is all looking good, man. I was just
telling everyone to get on the nutsert train.
Did we run out of nutserts?
No. Yep. No.
Awesome.
Yep.
All that's required now is 1 or 2 final pumps on the riv nut tool and we're almost done. Our rear guard is cut, nutserted and ready to have its eBay flare installed using our hex head bolts. We now have the same battle ahead of us to get it to blend with the rear of the side skirt. It can either be chopped flush or tucked in behind. One trick you can use to get it to mould properly is to heat up the plastic with a heat gun and then shape it using a damp rag to prevent melting. It's a slow process and you can damage your paint pretty badly, but it can give you just enough movement to make it work. And sadly now it's time to say goodbye to our multi-stud wheels that have carried this mad little nugget from one side of the world to another, and say hello to our beautifully restored Mark IIIs. It's one thing to make your wheels fit your car, but in our case, we've had to make the car fit the wheels.
So there it is. This was meant to be a bit of a how-to and it turned into a little bit more of a less-to.
Because it was easy.
Yes.
It was way easier than I thought it was going to be. I was sure we'd have to cut stuff and I was sure these would be really hard to fit and it was just easy.
Hashtag Yaris.
Yaris is getting
That's the deal, right? We have to buy a Yaris now. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing that happened today. Everyone knew the car looking good.
Everyone knew that was going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah, well now it's
Yaris
just definite.
So
there it is, Martin. You drill some holes, you put some nutserts in, and then all the other welding and all the other cutting-y, grindy stuff, we'll have to show the people later properly.
On something else. Because we don't need to do it, which I'm kind of happy about, actually. It's great.
So now,
Looks
as long
good.
as we can move it on jack stands and jacks, it'll look great.
Yeah, this is a lack of coilovers thing. The coilovers have been purchased.
They're JDM, aren't they?
They're on their way. From
Japan?
Because it's the only place you can get them.
That's so good.
So I purchased them from Japan via mate Rob, and they're on their way. But they were supposed to be here, but they got held up because you're no longer allowed to send coilovers in an airplane.
Have they got asbestos in them?
No, because they're pressurized or something.
Oh, really?
So they've just banned suspension. So it's on a boat, which means you have to wait
I hope that boat didn't sink like the rest of our stuff.
5 weeks.
Yeah, right.
To wait 5 weeks before it can actually be this low. So we'll put this suspension back in just so I can move it around and stuff. It'll look pretty pogo sticky.
Well, luckily we've got other things to do, Martin.
So many other things
Don't
to do.
we? Thanks for watching, everybody. Keep your eyeballs on faceballs.com/Mighty Car Mods.
Dad, did you say the Faceballs address properly?
Yeah,
Whoa.
just to mess with the chi. And there it is. See you later. I'm not hungry.
What?
Take that.
You're not hungry?
No.
I'm gonna go get like a nacho bowl.
I'm going to do the opposite of what I always do, and instead of walking off and eating something, I'm going to lie on the ground and eat nothing, Martin.
Guess what? You know why you're eating nothing?
No?
Because it's nacho bowl.
What?
And I'm having a nacho bowl. I'm walking out this door.
What?
I'm out. Nacho bowl.
Nacho bowl. You've gone. It's just you and me, people. I'm going to go buy a Yaris, like nothing. How'd you get the height right? Did you cut the springs?
I would never cut the springs.
Did you cut the springs?
I wouldn't cut the springs.
It looks like it's got cut springs. You've done a good job of it, though.
I have not touched the front one bit, and I might have been here really late last night.
What do you mean you haven't touched the front one bit?
The front's the same, man.
What do you mean?
I just might have twined the back a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you should never do this, and I'm not actually going to drive around on it, but to make sure it was going to fit.
Oh, good.
I had to
do
that.
Excellent. That's great. We should do a video on how to do that. Get an angle grinder and just cut it off.
I didn't use an angle grinder, man. Look what I used.
A Dremel?
Can you believe that a Dremel will get through a spring?
Really?
I mean, Mira springs.
That's crazy. Is it going to go and get painted soon?
Yeah, it has to.
Is that the next thing?
That's the next thing, man.
And when are we going to make it fast?